Algebra 1, Module 4, Lesson 5, the zero product property. Number 1, factor completely. So now, when it says factor completely, what do we need to take that polynomial down to? 2 factors. We're just factoring. Okay? So let's factor this. First, we're going to try trial and error, which is going to be 3D. They're going to be opposites, but since my middle term is positive here, I'm going to assume that this one's going to be positive and this one's going to be negative. May not be. That's why I'm going to try it now. So my two options are 2 and 5 and 10 and 1. Probably not going to be 10 and 1 considering my middle term is only 1. So let's try this. If we do 5 and 2, that gives me 6D minus 5D, which gives me a positive D. So there's my answer. Outer, inner. This is the outer, this is the inner. That results in a positive D, which is what I needed for my middle term, positive D. Okay? Now, why did I pick the second? Why did I choose this one to be positive? Because I knew that that last term was going to be multiplied by the 3D, right? And then that first term, or that the outer term, and then the inner term is not going to be multiplied by 3D, right? And I knew I needed a bigger number because I needed it to be positive, right? So 3D plus a positive number should be bigger than that inner term. That's what I was guessing. It's called the trial and error. That's the type of stuff you'll pick up on as you go through this. Okay? So those are my two factors. Okay? Now it says solve for D. Now we want to get the answer for D. You also know how many answers are there going to be. Fail. How many answers are they going to be? There's 2 answers. Why? The highest degree is 2. These are those terms that y'all should have learned. If you can look and see that the highest degree is 2D squared, that tells you you're going to have 2 answers. If it was D cubed, you would have 3 answers, but you don't. You have D squared, so there's going to be 2 answers. Guess what? It's the zero product property. So we're going to say 3D minus 5 equals 0. Then we're going to say D plus 2 equals 0. You're going to take your factors and set them equal to 0. Okay? Now, solve by adding 5 to both sides. We get 3D equals 5. Divide by 3. Divide by 3. D equals 5/3. Now, this one's simple. D is negative 2. Right? Does everybody see that? There's your 2 answers. D is equal to 5/3 and D is equal to negative 2. Everybody understand that? You're going to take your factors Set those equal to 0 and solve. Okay? In what ways was problem 1 and problem 2 similar? Well, you're working with quadratics, but one you were working with them in standard form, and one you were working with it in factored form, or factor form, I guess. So, if it says solve for D and you're given a quadratic, what are you going to do first? If you're giving a quadratic and you're told to solve for the variable, what are you going to do first? We're going to put it in factor form. Once it's in factor form, I'm going to take each factor and set it equal to 0 and solve for that variable. Now, listen, what if I would have first factored out a 9? Okay, so let's just say I would have had 9, 3D minus 5, D plus 2. 9 is also a factor, right? So another factor would be 0. Okay, just like if it was 9x, that would equal 9x equals 0, divide by 9, divide by 9, x equals 0, right? You could also, remember this is a factor. Whatever's out front is a factor, okay?